Alright you guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be doing a declutter of my primers, my powders, and my concealers. It feels like every time I do a declutter, I get a different sense of the types of products that I want to keep using and that I want to keep in my collection. And I really feel like every time I do a declutter, there's some other mindset that I have that tells me like, okay, that's just not the type of product that I want to use, or I've just come to understand that I'm never going to reach for that product and I don't want to keep it and not be able to pass it along while it's still good to somebody else who might use a product that's like that. I also do have in here things that I included in my worst of beauty so far for 2024. I have things in here that I'm still testing. I have things in here that haven't even gone into like my formal speed reviews. So I will be holding on to some of those things, and some of those things are like taking up space in here. But I thought I would do a declutter that also includes like mini reviews on all this stuff. So we're gonna go a little bit more in depth than just like a quick and dirty declutter. So I'm gonna I think I'm gonna just move this over here a little bit and then start pulling these products out. So this first one here was included in my worst of beauty for 2024. This is from Soul Body. It's the shimmering dry oil. I did not like any of this collection at all. This came from the Twilight collection. You can shake this up. So it's not necessarily that like it sitting at the bottom is gross, but the consistency of this is way too thin. It doesn't pump out well from this little hole here. It kind of splashes like everywhere. It doesn't sink into the skin. See how watery it is? It feels very oily. Not like a body oil that's like a little bit thicker that really does sink into the skin well. This just kind of makes my skin feel greasy and gross. This is just not a good product. I didn't enjoy anything from the Twilight collection. So I thought about holding on to the products that I included in my worst of beauty so far, but I think I'm just gonna do like a roundup of all the items that I didn't talk about for like the remainder of the year. So those things that I did talk about in my worst of beauty 2024, I'm gonna declutter, and we'll talk about like, I think there's like one other primer in here that came from that video as well. So I'm gonna declutter this one. This was the other primer that came from my worst of beauty for 2024. This is the Blurring Putty Primer from LA Girl. It's supposed to be duping the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. This was not a good dupe. This was really thin. It's very like mushy. It doesn't have any real tack to it, and it doesn't do anything. It's not blurring at all. It's kind of, again, very slimy, very greasy. It doesn't sink into the skin, just leaves like this film on the face, and it doesn't blur anything. So I really didn't think that it was a good dupe at all. And this also, like I said, went in my worst of beauty for 2024 so far. So this is another one I'm going to pass along. This one from Danessa Myricks, I am still testing. This is the Blurring Balm Powder for face and eyes in the shade Universal. I have only used this, I think, like twice, and I think that it's nice. I think it does blur. I don't think it's like an overly mattifying product. I was using it like underneath the foundation, and I like the way that it feels on the skin. It's also like super smooth, but I don't really notice like a huge difference with my makeup on top of it. But I am still testing this one, so I am gonna hold on to this one for now. So I'm gonna set that over there. I do have some products in here that were in my like reference library. I have technically like decluttered them in the past, but what I try to do is go through the items that I keep in my closet for reference and declutter them on a pretty regular basis, so I'm not holding onto them if they're not products that I'm doing comparisons with or I'm talking about in future videos. This was one of them. This is the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. I have liked this during different times, but it's just not something that I'm like reaching for now. This is not technically like the type of primer that I'm grabbing if I'm grabbing a primer at all. I'm typically not looking for a primer that's hydrating. I have like a couple in my collection that are hydrating or meant for hydrating purposes, but they're a pretty pared down selection of primers that do hydrate. The Milk Hydro Grip, as you can see, like it's about half gone. It's just a little mini. I did like this. I was trying to use this. This may have even been like in my project pan at one particular point, but it's just not something that I'm reaching for now. And if I am, I would be reaching for the Power Grip Primer from e.l.f. This is really sticky. This one has the 4% niacinamide. This is really grippy primer. Like it immediately gets tacky on the skin. I think it really does help to lock my makeup down. I do like niacinamide in the morning time so I can wear it during the day typically just for like oil control. So if I'm gonna grab for something that is grippy, it's going to be the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer. I have come to like this. I haven't had it that long, but I do enjoy it for gripping my makeup. Also, this is in my like current everyday makeup rotation. So this one I'm gonna hold on to, but I'm gonna get rid of the Milk Hydro Grip. And next, this one from Hard Candy is the Sheer Envy Hydrating Primer. This is supposed to be duping the Milk Hydro Grip. This is nice. I don't think it's a bad dupe. I think it's very similar in like texture and consistency. I'd say that this one doesn't have as much stickiness to it when it first goes on. It's definitely much more emollient. As you can see, it just like kind of glides across the skin. But I think overall, it does a very similar thing from Milk. I bought this for a dupes video just to test it against the Milk makeup one. And I think it's decent. I think it's nice, especially for drugstore pricing against what the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer can cost. I think it's a decent dupe, but again, just not reaching for primers like this. So I'm gonna declutter this one completely. It's gonna come out of like my reference library or just the bins of stuff that I keep in case I end up talking about later. And I'll pass it along. I'll pass it along to my sister. And I have this in here. This is brand new. It's half empty already, but I haven't even used it. It's the Lock and Seal Liquid Makeup Setter from JCat. I didn't use any of this. So like, what is left in this is how this came straight out of the box. Now, this is supposed to take like liquid makeup and set it down. And I thought that it would be cool. Like I thought I might have a use for this, like a liquid blush or something that just didn't last super long, or even like a foundation. I don't think I have a use for this. Honestly, I think this is just something that's sat around that I don't even think about, and maybe it would end up being like something that I really enjoy, but I haven't reached for it, so I'm just gonna pass it along. I have a couple of bronzing type products. I think they're all right here. I have one from Iconic London. I keep this in my primer drawer, but I mean, really I should put it in like my bronzer drawer. This is called the Instant Sunshine Bronzing Drops, and I think this only came in one shade. I like it. I mean, it's very metallic. It's very Iconic London. You twist this to open it, which I forgot. I like the applicator. I think it's kind of cool. I was wearing this all alone as like a bronzer on top of my foundation, and I liked it for that. I don't necessarily love this like on the forehead, but I do like this on the cheeks. I think I'll probably move this though to my bronzer drawer because that's really how I like to use this, just on top of the foundation, but you could mix it in. It's pretty thick consistency, as you can see. Like it's got this almost like moussey texture, so you can really like blend it out, but it's pretty pigmented. Like it packs a decent punch. So I do enjoy this product. I just think it's pretty unique. I don't have anything like it, and I really do like it, like all over the cheeks. I think it does look good on top of the foundation. So I'm gonna keep it, but I'm gonna move it to my bronzer drawer. All right, next, this is a discontinued product from KaliRay. It's the Just Add Rays. Where is my bronzing drops from KaliRay? They actually might be in the bronzer drawer already, but these were discontinued. These are for face and body. I don't think these came in a shade. They just came in like the one shade, which I think KaliRay does quite a bit. This is a much thinner formula. I kept it in the bronzer drawer because this is something that I like to like mix in with my foundation. Really just kind of like on the cheeks, but I will put it everywhere. It's really kind of a thin formula, so I feel like it's kind of meant to be like mixed in with the foundation as opposed to on top of it, like the Iconic London drops. It smells delicious. I really like KaliRay products. It never separated from any of my foundation. It never made it look bad. I do think like it darkens it. So if I'm dealing with like a lighter foundation, I might mix this in and put it all over the face. But I think there's a purpose for it, and I do enjoy KaliRay products, and I have enjoyed the way that these look. So because I really do enjoy using it, I'm gonna hold on to it. Same thing with the Physicians Formula Butter Glow Bronzing Serum. This also, again, just comes in the one shade. This is another one that's very thin. It's a little bit thicker than the KaliRay drops, but it's still thin enough that you can mix it into your foundation, and I do like doing that. This one is a lot less neutral. This one has a lot more warmth to it than the KaliRay ones, which look more golden, and this actually looks like very bronzy. But I like these, again, just like all over the face. Sometimes I will literally just squirt it onto the back of my hand and pick it up like this with a brush and then just tap it onto the cheeks, and I really do like that. Again, I will also, because it's thin enough, mix it in with like a lighter foundation. And these, again, kind of like smell like coconut. So I'm gonna hold on to those also. This next one here from NYX is the Blur Screen 30 Blurring Primer Sunscreen with SPF 30. I took this with me very recently on a trip for a week. I brought this because I wanted basically a primer and a sunscreen in one. I do have the e.l.f. kind of like the dupe for the Unseen Sunscreen by Supergoop, which I really like, and I have in my skincare drawer downstairs. I like this because it's more like an actual sunscreen. It doesn't have that silicone base. It's much more hydrating. And I think that I prefer sunscreen that's like this over one that feels pore filling and feels like a silicone base, even though there's no silicone. The only thing with this primer is it does get a little tacky. It definitely is on the thicker side, and I find that some foundations have a hard time sticking on top of it well. So like that's the only thing. I like the way it performs, but it doesn't perform perfectly with every single foundation that I pair it with. Sometimes it can make it just like look a little bit heavy, or the two textures mixed together just don't work really well. But overall, I really do like this product. I would say honestly, it's probably about half gone now. So I'm gonna hold on to that one. I think I wanna talk about my pore filling primers next. I feel like these are probably the ones that are like the pore filling. I have the Liquid Poreless Putty Primer. I did declutter the one that was in a pot from e.l.f. I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. I don't know that I notice it doing enough on my skin for me to justify keeping it. I have used it a handful of times. There's no relativity. I haven't used it recently enough to remember how I feel about it. I remember liking it way more than the potted one, which maybe felt just a little bit more dry, where this one tends to feel a little bit more hydrating. So I'm gonna hold on to this because this is a type of primer that I'm reaching more for these days. So I'm gonna hold on to that one. This one from Rare Beauty is the Pore Diffusing Primer. This one is in my everyday makeup drawer currently. I like it. I've just had this product for so long. I don't think it's the best pore diffuser, but it's pretty decent. But because it's just on the older side, and I prefer the Milk Makeup one and the Caliray one as far as pore filling primers go more. Primers I don't use very frequently, so like 2 is plenty. I think that I'm gonna pass this one along, especially because I've used it this month and recently, and so I know that I prefer these other 2 primers like over this one. Even though I think it's a decent primer from Rare Beauty and I have raved about this in the past, I definitely prefer both of those more than this one. So I am gonna let this one go. So let's go into the 2 that I keep talking about. The Milk Makeup Pore Eclipse Mattifying Primer. I like a mattified base because I sweat so much, plus I am combo skin anyway, and especially because this time of year in Florida. I think this one just performs a little bit better than the Rare Beauty, and it's just a little bit more mattifying. And I think this one's the mini too, so there's not a ton of product in here, so I'm gonna keep that one. And then the Caliray So Blown Clean Blurring Primer with collagen peptides. I really enjoyed this one. Again, I really like the Caliray products. For whatever reason, they're just so mild and they seem to work pretty well, and they don't come out with releases every 5 seconds. But I would say this is the most blurring of the probably 4 that I just talked about, the e.l.f., the Milk, this one, and the one from Rare Beauty. It is the most blurring, but this also feels very hydrating. It's also the thickest in texture too, and this one has like a nice scent to it, and Caliray is all clean. So honestly, if I were gonna keep just one blurring primer, it would probably be this one, so I'm gonna hold on to that one. And the final one here, and I have not even talked about this in my speed reviews, is the Pore Filling Primer from AOA Studio. I feel like this has got to be duping the Smashbox, but I can't say for certain. I have put this away and it is ready to talk about in my speed reviews, so I don't want to tell you guys too much about it. It feels more like a hydrating primer. Like, this doesn't feel like the Smashbox, which is like silicone based and a little bit on the drier side. This definitely has more like e.l.f. Power Grip or the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip properties, but I don't find it overly pore filling. So it's staying for the purposes of going in speed reviews. I have one anti-redness primer from Catrice. It's the Corrector. I've tried so many different like anti-redness primers in the past and I didn't love them. I found that they just either turned my skin too green and or didn't neutralize the color. And I felt like the Catrice one did the best. I don't reach for it like ever. It's nice to have it on hand in case, but it's just not something that I ever do. It sinks in nice. It really is hydrating, but I almost feel like it's a little bit too green. It definitely looks like it leaves a little bit of a green cast on me. And I have another one that I really do enjoy that I think I'll talk about. I think it's in the concealer section that I would prefer to use over this one from Catrice. The curtains were open and so it was like really bright, so I apologize. Anyway, I think I'm gonna let this one go. I just never reach for this. Okay, I have two here that are a glowy base. I have the Say Glowy Super Gel in Star Glow, which I really do like. And then I have the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion, and this one is in, I believe this is the lightest shade. Light Glow. Actually, no, this is the second lightest. They have Fair Glow, I think, which is 901. This one is 902. I don't even use these types of products anymore. And I only need one. But like the Say is on the lighter side and this is a little bit more pink. I mean, if one is gonna be more illuminating, it's definitely the Say over the L'Oreal. Like the L'Oreal is nice, it's just, this is not gonna show. Like if I put a foundation on top of it, but this is a product that I could use like on top of my foundation if I wanted to. It just, there's more to it. It has more sheen and I think it's just more impactful. And even though I really do like the consistency of the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion and it's still a relevant product, I really am just not reaching for this. And again, if I'm gonna keep something like just to have when the occasion strikes, it's gonna be Say. So Say is gonna stay and I'm going to pass along the L'Oreal. I'm actually doing so much better than I thought I was going to. I like a big collection, so it's definitely hard to get rid of things just because you're not reaching for them. I don't mind getting rid of things when they're bad products. I think it just makes it a lot more difficult when you spent your money on it when it's not terrible. But I would like to get better at letting things go that I'm not reaching for and then feeling guilty that I'm not using them, essentially. Okay, I have a couple of hydrating primers. And this is kind of where I said that I like to pare down my collection of hydrating primers. This one from Dior is the Forever Glow Veil. And I think this just came in the one like shade. This released, I want to say like last year probably. I haven't shaken this in a while, so it's a little chunky. I think it'll rub in though. This one is just super silky smooth. It doesn't like have a strong glow. It's not like pearlescent or anything. It's just very hydrating and it kind of leaves the skin really just hydrated. I mean, it's not more complex than that. Like I said, it doesn't have like pearls in it or anything. I have not used that much of this product, but I like a lot of Dior stuff. It's a more expensive primer, maybe my most expensive primer in here, probably my most expensive primer. I do try to keep some hydrating primers. I'm gonna hold on to this one. I think, I've held on to this one from Hourglass for a while. It's the number 28 primer serum. I thought this was gonna be one of those primers that like, more like the Milk makeup where it makes your makeup last because it's a stickier primer and it smells like, I don't know, pine. Like it really has a strong pine scent. But looking at the description of what this product does, it's supposed to be a hydrating primer. Like very specifically, that's what it's used for. So I've held on to it for the event that I use a hydrating primer because it feels so silky and soft. But honestly, I don't reach for it all that much. It's so similar to the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip. That's how this feels. Like silky, but a little bit on the stickier side. I don't know. Let's go over these last two first that are hydrating primers. This one from First Aid Beauty, I really like the Coconut Skin Smoothie Priming Moisturizer. I've had it for a while and I use it again just pretty infrequently. I'd like to kind of pair it against the Glossier. Like I love the way this smells and I love how hydrating this is. I really like both of these. At one point, I was using this Glossier Priming Moisturizer all of the time. I could not stop using this. I think it was like last year, was using this like every single day. It's very thin. It sinks into the skin like almost immediately. It does feel super hydrating. You know, I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. I think I really only need one of these between the Glossier and the First Aid Beauty. Honestly, I don't know why this is hard for me. I like both of them. I just don't reach for either very often. Okay, I sat with it for a little while, and because these are both priming moisturizers, they double as skincare also. They're not necessarily just like primers. I think that I could get more use out of both of these if I moved these to my skincare. I think that something like this is definitely what I reach for, like in the mornings. And just how I was using this primer and sunscreen as my skincare, like my skincare step before makeup, I can do the same thing with these. I just would rather get use out of both of these products because they're both very good, as opposed to passing one along and leaving them in my primer drawer. And because I probably wouldn't reach for a product like this on top of a moisturizer in the morning very often unless it was really in the fall time or, you know, the drier months. And all that to say, I'm gonna move both of these to my skincare because I run through skincare like crazy. I can go through products like this pretty quickly in this size. So I'm gonna hold on to both of these, but they're both gonna go into my skincare drawer. So I started thinking about the Hourglass number 28 serum, and I think what I'm gonna do is hold on to this one for now, and I'm gonna put this in my next rotation for my everyday makeup drawer to make a final decision on it. Now, the three that I have here that are more for like mattifying or controlling oils, I have one from One Size, which is the Secure the Sweat Dry Till Dawn Primer. Someone just left a comment on one of my videos when I was talking about this new release from One Size. It's like, well, one is for sweat and one is for oils, and they're not the same. So I'm like, okay, that's great. It didn't make my makeup waterproof at all. And that would be fabulous because as much as like you're bound to sweat here in Florida, it would be nice if it made my makeup waterproof. I honestly, I don't see enough in this On Till Dawn from One Size to justify keeping it in my collection. But you know, I'm willing to stand corrected as to what this product is supposed to do. So I'll keep it and put it in my everyday makeup drawer for this next rotation, and I'll really try to see, does this like really keep the sweat from breaking up my foundation instead of like controlling my oils? So I'll hold on to this one for now, but I am gonna pass this one along. The Yummy Skin Water Powder Serum from Danessa Myricks. You guys, this just didn't do anything for me at all. It didn't mattify me. It didn't make my makeup last longer. It didn't keep me from getting oily. Okay, not sweaty, but oily. It's super thin, and ideally, like, it would be really nice if it paired with the blurring primer from Danessa Myricks. I don't notice this doing enough. It has kind of like a powdery finish, but other than that, it didn't do anything. Like anything else on my skin. Just didn't have an impact at all. And I tried this so many ways very recently, so I'm gonna pass that one along. And this last one from One Size is the Oil Sucker Extreme Mattifying Primer. It's the alkaline primer. I like it. I definitely like it better when I paired it with a mattifying setting spray. Let's shake this up because I have been wearing this like the last week, and I noticed that it didn't work as well as it did the very first time that I used it. It's nice, it sinks into the skin well. It's not blurring or anything, but it's also not like extra thick, but it will dry down on your skin. So in case you guys don't know this, I have been corrected a couple of times in my testing new makeup video that it says that you're supposed to let it sit on your face for 3 minutes and refrain from making expressions. So pro tip on that. I was making a ton of expressions because it was getting really tight on my face. You really can feel this like get cool and then start to sink into the skin, and then your skin becomes tighter. It really is like oil sucker, which I really like. I don't think when I really start to get oily because I'm getting hot or anything really, just naturally just getting oily, I don't find that it controls everything the way that it did the first time, but I think it's still decent. I just like it better when I also pair it with a mattifying setting spray. So I'm gonna hold on to this one. It also has to go into a speed reviews. So if you guys stick around for my speed reviews, you'll also see it there. All right, that was it for primers. Let's get a final count. All right, so I had 25 primers, not including the one that I had from Iconic London. I just didn't count that. I have held onto 16. This one is gonna go into a speed reviews, but I will not be holding onto it. So that one will get decluttered at some point, and then 2 of these are actually going downstairs in my skincare drawer. So not all of these are going back. And then of course I will be retesting this one and then retesting the one from Hourglass in my everyday makeup drawer for the month of, oh my gosh, September, I guess. And then this one I'll still continue to test as well because I haven't like had enough of a chance to really test this. So there's a couple that are still being tested, 2 that we'll call like on the chopping block, and then 2 of them I am going to move downstairs to my skincare drawer. And then I'm getting rid of these 9, like permanently. Will be leaving my collection. I'll just pass all of these along to my sister, see if she wants any. My grandmother does also take my makeup too, so whatever my sister or my little niecey don't want will also go to my grandma. So that's it for primers, you guys. Let's move on to concealers. All right, guys, moving on to concealers. I have too many concealers, but I love concealers. There was a hair there. I even have some in here that were in my like reference library that I'm going to make decisions on. I'll probably declutter a few of those, but I thought I would just pull them all out just to go over them. So not all of these are like in my permanent collection. I think I'll probably just like set these up here and start with a group of them here, and that's just kind of how we'll go through them. I also do have color correctors in here. So I mentioned to you guys that I really do like concealers. There's just so many concealers that I get along with, and I've pared down my collection pretty well the last time I did a declutter, and I have been using a lot of these pretty regularly, but there are some that I enjoy more, so much more than others, that it would be better for me to pass along some of them, even though I do like them, they're not bad, so that others can get use out of them. So we'll start with the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Dark Spots Corrector plus Serum. I have mine in the shade Light Neutral 22. This is the first IT Cosmetics product that has actually worked for me. This shade is a little bit dark for my under eyes, but I am all over the place with my shades for my base products, and so a lot of times I can make them work, especially because this is a neutral shade. I can get away with it. I think this is a decent formula. It's thin. It's not like thick and tacky like I find a lot of IT Cosmetics base products to be. I love the neutrality of this. I think that it looks really good under the other under eyes. It does last. I don't love it more than a lot of my other concealers. And the reason that I held onto it this long really was because it was the first IT Cosmetics product that worked for me, and because I did enjoy it. But again, I don't love it more than a lot of these other concealers. So I'm gonna pass this one along. The Lawless, the one in, or Conceal the Deal concealer, I have mine in the shade Linen. This is a really nice, very, very nice full coverage concealer. And this is brightening. Like, this shade for me is on the lighter side under the under eyes, but it's pretty cool toned, which I really do like. I have been told that I have like a cool undertone. It's pretty heavy, like in terms of coverage, but it's a very thin formula. Again, it has a little bit of tack to it as well. I don't find that it creases or sinks into my fine lines. I think honestly, Lawless is more of a slept on brand than it should be. There's a lot of products that I try from Lawless that I really enjoy that just not a lot of people talk about. Like the One and Done mascara is fabulous. This concealer is fabulous. I like pretty much everything that I try from Lawless. Haven't tried that much, but everything I've tried I really do enjoy. And I really do enjoy this concealer. It's not the longest lasting. That is the only thing that separates it from some of the other concealers, is that this one fades off throughout the day faster than some of my other more full coverage concealers. But I still want to hold on to it. I just used it recently and I really liked the way that it looked under the under eyes. So I'm gonna continue to hold on to that one. All right, the next one here is the Catrice True Skin High Cover Concealer. This one is in the shade Cool Cashmere. I also like this one because it's a very cool undertone, which again, I don't find a lot of. Like a lot of the concealers that I get that are neutral, they come out to yellow or just warm toned in general, but this one is very cool toned. It's very high coverage. I don't think it's my favorite though, like high coverage concealer that I have in my collection. I think it lasts longer than the Lawless one does, and I loved it so much more than the foundation. So I decluttered the foundation, but I held onto the concealer, but I think it's just too deep for me. Like I would rather use this like all over, or even like just like spot conceal with this, but there are other ones that I enjoy more than this one. So I'm gonna pass this one along. This is not one that I feel connected to like I do some of the other ones. One that's actually very comparable to the Lawless Conceal the Deal is the Flower Beauty Get Real Serum Concealer. Now I don't think this is like a serum concealer in that it doesn't feel like serum-like. It's pretty thick. This one is a brightening concealer for my under eyes. It's very light on me. This one's in the shade Vanilla. This one is even more high coverage than the Lawless one. I do like that it brightens my under eyes. It feels like it would be a little bit on the drier side. Like this looks like it would almost crease or sink in, but for whatever reason, even though I put this on and I think, oh, today's the day it's gonna crease, it never creases. I don't know why I feel like that. Maybe just because it's so high coverage that I look at my under eyes and go, oh, this looks like a product that would definitely sink into my fine lines, but it doesn't. So I'm gonna hold on to this one too. I think the Lawless and the Flower Beauty are like really my only two like truly high coverage, full coverage concealers. And they're both like brightening, so I like that about them. And they're both like fairly neutral. The Flower Beauty is a little bit warmer in Vanilla than the one from Lawless, which is a little bit more cool toned. But I like both of them, and I don't have very many full coverage concealers. So holding on to that one. Okay, the Lancome Serum Concealer. This I got in too deep of a shade for me. This one was in the shade 220C, but I love how cool toned it is. And this is one of my favorite concealers in my whole collection. This and the base products from Lancome, the Tonti Dole foundations, are so good. They work so well for my skin. They're products that just, I don't know, they look really good. They're high coverage, they last. Actually, now that I'm kind of swatching this looks a little bit warm, more warm than I remembered. But this is a concealer that I lay so heavy under my under eyes, and it's like the perfect amount of like light medium coverage that never creases and sinks in. It's a product that I can just go ham on under the under eyes, and I think it lasts all day. It's so thin, it sinks in. When I think of serum concealer, like I think of this as opposed to like the Flower Beauty, which is much thicker. This one is truly like hydrating and very, very thin. So this is one of my favorite concealers in my whole collection. So this one definitely stays. Now, this one is newer to me. It's the Refi. I think this is just called like the brightening concealer. This one is in the shade 04. I love this concealer for the cool tonedness. I don't have very many cool toned concealers. Actually, a lot of my cool toned ones I'm actually going over right now. But this is so cool toned. It's my favorite cool toned concealer in my whole collection. And it's like, I don't know, it's almost like peachy. So it kind of looks good under my eyes with my skin tone. And I find this is pretty medium coverage, but it's so brightening because it's like peachy. It's so different and unique in terms of like the shade in my collection that's why I really like it. I also find that it's like a tackier formula, so it stays longer on my skin or on my under eyes throughout the day. And I don't find that it sinks into my fine lines or anything like that. It's one of my favorite concealers of the current moment. Definitely one that stands out in my collection because of the shade and just how cool it is. So that one's definitely staying. Now the L'Oreal True Match Concealer, the super blendable foundation that I feel like looks a lot like this in terms of packaging from the True Match line, is like one of my all-time favorites that released like 2 years ago. Maybe that was just last year. Actually, now that I think about it. The concealer though, it feels so thin, but this one just doesn't stand out in my mind. I don't know, this one I'm gonna have to keep testing. Like I love the doe foot applicator and how it's like flat like this. And I think this is pretty cool toned. Like once I blend it out, I think it's gonna look pretty cool toned. It even has that like peachiness about it that I really do like in a concealer. I prefer that they're cool toned over like a yellow if they're gonna be on the lighter side. I'm gonna hold on to this one and test it again. I don't usually do like everyday makeup rotations with concealers because I like to use them just depending upon what foundation I'm using, like all the time. Like if I'm using a foundation that's a certain shade or a certain undertone or whatever, I will oftentimes grab different concealers, especially if it's like, you know, a more full coverage foundation or a skin tint or something. I will definitely rotate like the coverages of the concealer. So I don't ever like to put them in my everyday makeup rotation, but I will try and use that within the next week. Now this one from Laura Mercier, I think I did try recently. It's the Real Flawless Weightless Perfecting Concealer in 1C1. So again, I think this is meant to be cool toned. This is again not one that like stands out in my mind. This one again is like on the peachy side, which I really like. These cool toned ones seem to have like a bit of peachiness. This one isn't, I would say, like similar to the foundation, which is so lightweight. It feels warm going onto the skin. Like I don't feel like this is as oily of a texture, but I do think it gives a little bit of radiance. I think it is super thin. I think it sinks into the skin very nicely. Like see how it just like gives like this hint of radiance. I really like the shade too. I think that it's more on like the light coverage. It's definitely a lighter coverage day concealer for me, but I'm gonna hold on to that one too. I really do like both the base product and the concealer from Laura Mercier in the Real Flawless line. And then the one from Charlotte Tilbury, the Beautiful Skin Radiant Concealer, another one that I really like in the shade 4 Fair. I don't find this as like overly radiant, but it's pretty true medium coverage. This one in 4 though has a little bit more warmth to the shade. It's still again like a little bit peachy, so I can get away with it, but it's kind of teetering on the more warm concealers in my collection. This, I've heard a lot of people say like is very radiant under the under eyes, but honestly once I'm done powdering and all of that, I don't find that it's overly radiant. In fact, I think it's like even on the drier side, but I do love the way that this looks. I don't think this is an overly long lasting formula for sure, but I love the way that this looks under my under eyes. So it's another one of my favorites. So I'm gonna hold on to it. I told you guys, I love concealer. Recently, I don't know why, but I have just really come to enjoy like applying the concealer or just the way concealers like looking under the under eyes. It's so much harder for me to get rid of concealers than it is like a primer, which I don't use very often. Okay, the one from Dior is the Backstage Flash Perfector Concealer. This is in 1N. I used to love this. This is the kind that comes with like the little brush tip. I used it pretty recently and you know what? It's not like a standout formula in my collection. It's not like it does anything bad and I would like to keep it, but I have so many, I really do need to pare this down. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like medium coverage. I don't think it sinks into my fine lines, except I feel like it can if you put too much under the under eyes. It's just my other Dior concealer I love so dearly that it doesn't compare to this, and this doesn't stand out to me amongst the other ones that I have, so I'm gonna pass it along. I'm gonna be a big girl and pass it along. All right, let's go through this next group of concealers and color correctors. I definitely see some in here that I wanna declutter. So I have this one from Kosas. It's the Revealer Concealer, and this one is in 2.5C. I have tried so many times to find the right shade for me, and I know that they've just come out with like more shades, like they've just done a shade extension, I'm pretty sure, to make these more cool toned, but I have always found them to be too yellow, too warm, and this is no exception. Even in 2.5C, it's like even too deep for me under my under eyes. How come so many people love this? I mean, if I wanted to like dot this a couple of times, it might be really nice under the under eyes, but this sinks into my fine lines like nobody's business. And it's probably currently the only concealer that I have in my collection that actually sinks into my fine lines under my under eye. But people love it. I cannot get down with this, and I have repurchased this trying to convince myself that I just didn't apply it right the first time to make this work for me, and it does not. So I'm gonna pass it along. Again, I'm going to declutter it. Okay, this also came out of my reference library in the closet. This is the All Hours Concealer from YSL in LC1. I think this is supposed to be light cool 1, but I find this is, again, just kind of like on the warm side. Like it's almost orange. It's like gone past peach and it's like straight up a warm shade. I find this to be on the drier side. I find that the foundation is also on the drier side. I like a drier, more mattifying foundation than I do a concealer typically, because I maybe have a little bit of a drier under eyes. So I just find this looking a little bit dry under my under eyes more so than I like. I held onto it for reference, but I am going to officially pass it along. Same thing with this, the Gucci concealer. This one is in the shade 14N Fair. I also pulled this out of my reference library. This is such a bad shade for me. This is like almost yellow. I definitely got the wrong shade when I purchased it online. Can I make this work? Yes. But I also find that it's not a remarkable formula. It kind of looks streaky under the under eyes. It's not a formula that I find sinks into the skin very well. I think it's okay. I think it's all right, but the shade is definitely off. And because it's not something that I have even referenced since I put it in my reference library, I'm gonna pass it along. I also find that the foundation, as much as I love the foundation, it's very similar to the YSL All Hours, is that this is a little bit drier. The foundation is a little bit drier. I can deal with the foundation being a little bit drier, but they're both yellow. Like even the foundation is too yellow a shade for me. All right, this one was also in my reference library. It's the concealer from House Labs. This one is in the shade 4 Fair Neutral. Not a formula that I like. I know a lot of people like really enjoy this. I think this is like nice and peachy. Like it definitely has that peachy kind of like cool tonedness about it that I do like in terms of like shades, but this is such a tacky formula. It is so sticky. It never sinks into my skin, settles into my fine lines, like it creases under my under eyes. I've never found a way to make this work well. Even though I like the shade, I find the foundation is also the same way, just like thick, and it sits on top of my skin instead of sinking in. The reason that I held onto it was for reference, very specifically because it was a popular product. I think this one, for the purposes of holding onto it for reference, I'm still gonna hold on to it because it's such a well-loved concealer. I think that I may end up talking about it. I don't know yet. Probably not, but I mean, there could be a time that I do. So for now, I'm still gonna hold on to it for that reason, but it's just for reference. It's not for me personally. Now, here's another one that I have repurchased so many times. The NYX Bare With Me Serum Concealer. And this one is in the shade, I think it's 02 Light or S02 Light. I found the same thing. Like the popularity with this one and the Kosas is crazy. I think this is a pretty decent shade. This is again one of those like super cool tones that's almost peachy, but this is so thick and it like sinks into my fine lines or creases under my under eyes so badly, just like the Kosas one. And I don't think it's like super serum-y either. Like see how thick this looks on my skin? It doesn't sink in. It's pretty high coverage. It feels dry. So recently, before I took a trip, I was even trying to find like a product that was universal, that I could use a concealer as my foundation or my foundation as my concealer so that I could take something small when I traveled. And I tried this before I left. It looks so dry all over my face. And I've heard a lot of you say that you really like this all over the face. You'll use this as straight up foundation. I don't know what I did wrong. It was so dry on my skin. It looked terrible. So I'm done. Like I have nothing left to do to try this to make it work. I'm just going to pass it along. All right, let's talk about these NYX Pro Fix Sticks. I bought 2 of them when they released and I really love the corrector shade. I think this is an alabaster. No, it's in pink. This one's an alabaster. I love this. I love this thing and I think that it's such a different formula than the actual concealer shades because I feel like this is creamier. It's a product that goes like really well into the inner corner of the eye and like really color corrects fabulously. This was in my best of beauty for 2022, but conversely, this was in my worst of 2022. What year are you Like, why are we 2 years ago? 2024, but this was in my worst of beauty for 2024 so far. It's just a drier formula. Like, it even looks drier. And even when I swatch it, it's just not as creamy and it's thicker. But I just found that it creased really bad under my under eyes. I feel like these Pro Fix sticks are just not a creamy enough stick formula when they're in the concealer shades. But for whatever reason, the color corrector shade, or shades probably, I'm guessing, because I haven't tested anyone other than like the pink one. Like, this just looks drier. It just doesn't even sink in very well. That they're just formulated with, I don't know, a little bit more oils, or they're just more emollient in general. So I've already talked about this in my worst of beauty, so I'm gonna declutter this one, but I'm for sure holding on to this guy. I think this is a really great product for getting into the inner corners where I tend to get blue and I miss so often with my concealer. My absolute favorite color corrector though is the one from KARIM. It's the Hideaway Brightening and Hydrating Under Eye Serum Concealer, and this one is in Dawn. This is a fabulous, like fabulously formulated color corrector for fair skin. It is so serum-y. It is like the perfect shade, I think. There's this very light pink that isn't like peach. I think a lot of the color correctors that I've tried in the past before, probably Milani came out with their color corrector, were a little bit too peach for my fair skin, whereas this one's like absolutely perfect in like neutralizing the dark circles under my under eyes, or the blue that develops. It sinks in, it does a great job. You can lay this super heavy and then I lay concealer on top of it and it never cakes up. So it's a fabulous product. I know Dawn has been sold out, like that particular shade, for a really long time. But I recommend that if it ever comes back in stock, or even like checking their website to see if it comes back before Sephora, this is a great color corrector for fair skin. The Tower 28, I think this is like the serum concealer again. What do they call this? Yeah, serum concealer. This one is in EP. I didn't like this concealer for like the longest time, and everyone seemed to really like love it when it first launched, but it creased so badly on me. This is too deep of a shade for me. I do know that. So I like to like spot conceal with this if I can. I've kept it around because I actually love the way that it looks now that I use it a little bit differently than I did when I first tried it. I dot this now. I just tap it twice under the under eyes and no more than that, like dot dot, and it's a perfect amount of coverage, and I can make this shade work too. But I do not like it when it's like laid like a stripe. Like I will some of these other ones just swipe them pretty heavily under the under eyes and they never cake, but this one will. There's just something about the level of coverage with 2 dots and like how this looks under the under eyes, because it is such a thin product, that I want to keep it because I like the way that I can make it work. But I do like to spot conceal with this, or even just like wear this all over the face because it's too dark as like just an under eye concealer. So I am going to hold on to it still. And lastly from this little pile is the Kulfi concealer. I cannot remember what they call this, but it's in Ice Berry. There it is, Main Match Concealer. I love this product. I have come to find that I really enjoy Kulfi products. The only thing I've tried from Kulfi that I don't love so far is their new Lassie lips, like lip oils. I don't think they're my thing. Not that they're bad, I don't think I love them. But this concealer is fab. Again, it's a little bit too deep of a shade for me in Ice Berry, but I will still make it work. It's a little bit of a tackier formula and it has good lasting power, and it's pretty medium to like full coverage. I would say this like teeters on full coverage even. Really enjoy that concealer from Kulfi, so it's gonna stay also. All right, from this next group, I think I'll go over the Milani one, the Under Eye Brightener in 01 Rose. Not a huge fan of the puffy, and I definitely gravitate towards the KARIM more, and also the NYX Pro Fix Stick. I don't think this is bad, and I think Milani understood creating a color corrector for very fair skin better than like other people were doing at the time. But I have the other color correctors and I held on to this because I do like it. I don't think it's as effective as the other ones, and I think I would rather just use the other ones. I don't need more than the ones that I've held on to and the one upcoming that I'm probably gonna hold on to. So I'm gonna let it go. Not that it's bad, it's just I don't color correct every day, so I don't need that many to have in my collection. All right, this RMS Beauty Uncover Up Concealer in 00 has been a favorite of mine for a while. It's a little bit of a tackier formula, but it is so beautiful under the under eyes. It kind of reminds me of like the Becca under eye corrector, like a little bit sticky, but it still sinks into the skin really well. And I think this one's the lightest shade in 00. So they definitely could go a little bit lighter, but it's such light coverage and it's so hydrating. It just looks really healthy under the under eyes. I didn't like the Uncover Up foundation, but I really like this concealer, so I'm still gonna hold on to it. And she just launched a brand new, I think it's a foundation. I don't think it's a skin tint, but it could be, and it's on its way. It should be here like maybe tomorrow. So I'm probably gonna do a wear test with that, and I'll use this concealer in that video. All right, the Milk Makeup Future Fluid All Over Cream Concealer. This one is in way too dark of a shade, and it's in warm, 7N W. I liked it when it first came out. It was really nice. It's way too orange of a shade though, and I wore it pretty recently and I could tell that it just didn't sink into the skin as well as some of my other concealers. It's pretty medium coverage. I do find though that like because of its consistency, it definitely can have a tendency to like crease a little bit. It's just not a favorite in my collection. I think it was really nice when it first came out, but I have since then found so many more that I enjoy, so I'm gonna pass that one along. I feel very similarly to the Makeup Forever HD Skin Concealer, and this one is in the shade 1.3N. Not a bad shade, it's a brightening shade, but it's definitely like on the warm side, which I told you guys, like as far as like light shades go, I prefer that they like be cool toned if they're gonna be like kind of a brightening shade for me. I don't think it's a bad concealer, but I think that it's not a favorite, and I don't think it lasts very long. It's not a standout concealer for me, even though it isn't terrible. And I wore it just pretty recently. It's again, just not as high coverage as I would like, not as long lasting as I would like, just not a standout formula in my collection, so it goes. All right, a long time love and obsession that I've had with the LYS Triple Fix Serum Concealer. I have two. I have this one that's like almost done, and this is in LN6. They're both in LN6, which I had the foundation into. It's a little bit too deep of a shade for me, but I still make it work. I like the way that it feels. It's so thin and it sinks into the skin, and you can lay this like super heavy under the under eyes. It's so emollient and creamy. Like I have loved this concealer for so long. Probably like my oldest love in here. This was a backup that I had. I have used both of these because I keep one on my filming station and then one in my drawer. I'm definitely holding on to both of these. This one is even like twisting around. These packages, they're not the greatest quality, but anyway, I liked the foundation a lot. I don't think it had like the lasting power that I was looking for my combo skin, but I love their concealers and have for a long time. So I'm gonna hold on to those. The Smashbox Halo Healthy Glow 4-in-1 Perfecting Pen. This is one of those like brush applicators. It's the kind you like twist. I really liked this. Again, such like a creamy formula. It's pretty medium to like full coverage. This is another warm shade though, like too warm for me. What is this in? L10N. So it's that neutral shade that just doesn't go neutral. You know, the N, they tend to be on the warm side. But it's not a standout formula like it was at one point. I just thought it was like a totally underrated product. Like not a lot of people talked about it. I don't know. I think the shade is just a little bit too deep for me. And there are so many other concealers that I really do like that I'm looking at that I'm like, do I need to keep this one being such a bad shade for me? I just don't think I'm gonna miss it. So I'm gonna pass it along too. All right, down to the last two. I have a NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in Light 2 Vanilla. I recently repurchased this because I used to love it. I've had these in my collection like many different times and have used them up. And this is a very, very cool tone shade. But again, it's just not a concealer formula that I think stands out to me as much as the ones I've talked about over here. The ones over here I reach for all the time and I love them and I consistently want to go back to them. And this is not a product that I feel like compares now to some of the other ones that I have that I absolutely love. So I'm going to pass that one along as well. And then the concealer from Makeup by Mario, the Surreal Skin Awakening Concealer, and I have mine in the shade 160. This was never a love of mine. I felt like this was too warm of a shade. anyway, but I didn't find that it lasted very long on me. I felt like it was a pretty medium coverage concealer, but it was a little bit, again, just like a tackier formula that just didn't sink into the skin like super well. I really do like a serum concealer. I don't mind if it's tacky, I just really want it to sink in, and I feel like this just sat on top. Rubbing it into the skin, it just looks streaky, and I kept this one, like I've decluttered this one, but I kept it in my reference library thinking I might talk about it again, but I don't think it has the popularity that the House Labs one does, which is the only other one so far that I've held onto for like reference. So it's time. I'm gonna pass that along. Okay, this last group here, I have one here from Makeup Revolution. It's the Relove line. This one is in medium. I don't know why I got this in medium and not light, but I only ever touched this conceal shade, and I really like it. Like, I like it for concealing the eyes, but I haven't touched any of the other shades. Like, this would probably be even great for concealing the eyes or like an eye base or whatever, but there's just so many other formulas that I have that I reach for more, and I'm not often apt to reach for like a concealer palette like this. So I'm gonna pass this along. While it's pretty unused, I do like it though. I think it performs really well. The Instant Conceal and Correct from Rimmel I really like. It has the peachy shade or the pink shade, a green color corrector, and then purple for like neutralizing hyperpigmentation. This is definitely getting on the drier side, but it's still creamy enough. I've dug into this shade pretty well, but these perform really nicely. Like, if I'm gonna grab for a color corrector for neutralizing redness, it's going to be this one, and that's why I felt good about getting rid of the Catrice anti-redness primer, because this one just performs better than the other one, and I really do find that this like purple really does like neutralize like the hyperpigmentation, especially around my eyes that I have. So I'm gonna hold on to that one for now. I actually have some new ones in here that are like newer to me that I haven't used a lot or even have gone into speed reviews. So this one here, the AOA Locked Creamy Concealer, I won't tell you too much about it. It's a little bit too deep of a shade, but it is very cool toned. This hasn't gone into a speed reviews yet. I got a whole face of AOA Studio, so I'm gonna hold on to this because it still has to go into a speed reviews. Same with the Yummy Skin Lift and Flex Concealer from Danessa Myricks. I have not done this in a speed reviews yet, but I have finished testing it. This one is a little bit too warm of a shade for me, and it's a little bit too deep in 4. And then the AOA Studio one is in LC2. It is cool, but it's way too dark. So I don't know what I could have gotten, like LC1, I guess. I don't know what other shades there were, but it definitely was too deep for me. So I'm holding on to both of these for the time being because they need to go into a speed reviews. All right, this one from Say I have talked about in a speed reviews. It is in the shade 3. I don't even remember it. Like, I haven't reached for it enough. I think this is too warm. Yeah, too warm of a shade for me. It definitely leans more on the orange side, but this is one I want to pull back out and test more. I'll put this with like the L'Oreal True Match one that I'm going to test again. I cannot even remember what I feel about this. I mean, it feels like a little bit on the tackier side. I remember it being like, okay, nothing stand out. It kind of tells you something, but I am going to hold on to it for now because I don't want to declutter it. Well, what if I end up loving it? Even though I haven't yet. And this one I actually really do like from Moira Beauty. It's the Lavish Creamy Concealer, and this one is in the shade 150 Oatmeal. I think this one's a little bit too deep too. Yeah, it is. Fairly neutral shade, but it's definitely too deep. But it's, again, just like the kind of consistency that I really like, which is super thin, sinks into the skin really well. I love a super thin concealer that gives me pretty light, buildable medium coverage. That's probably what draws me to concealers like this. Like, that's my style, and that's what this has. I think it's more on the light coverage side. I don't think that it's like super medium coverage, but I just love the way that it sinks into the skin, and I don't think it fades off super fast. Not like top 5 concealers, but it's really good. Now, the Dior Forever Skin Correct in 2N. This is the reformulated version. I finished off my original. I don't love this one as much as the original. The original was my holy grail concealer. I loved it so freaking much, but this oxidizes. This oxidizes like crazy. I mean, look how the 2N looks. The shades even got like, I don't know, they were just different. My other one wasn't as warm as this, or it just didn't oxidize. Something about this new formulation oxidizes. I think I want to hold on to this and like give it one final hurrah. I really don't love this as much as the original. Sometimes I wish you'd just not reformulate shit. Like, no one asked you to do that. I get it. It's like being conscientious about making cleaner beauty or things that have less preservatives in it and whatnot. But I mean, really, sometimes it just changes things for the worse. I don't necessarily find that I enjoy reformulations. Probably less so than more often. But anyway, it's definitely oxidized from when I first purchased it. It's one of those concealers that just like, it's tackier, but it's smoothing on the skin. So it just stays all freaking day. It never budges. That's what I absolutely loved about this, is that it was like the perfect amount of medium coverage and just lasted all day. This is a product that I could wear as a foundation. It just worked so well. I didn't have luck with the foundation from this line, but I absolutely loved this concealer. I had more luck with the foundation, the face and body, which became my holy grail. So it was like the base product was nicer than the concealer was nicer than the base product. At least that's how I felt. That's how they worked for me anyway. I'm gonna give this one final hurrah. We'll see if it ends up staying. This one from Ritual Defy was a lab access release actually. So it was like something I got to purchase and then give feedback on. And this one is in the shade Potion 120, light for soft to neutral pink undertones. I love that the thing said all of that. So I think that this was meant, now my hand is wet. I think this was meant for my skin tone, but I do think it's a little bit deep, even though it's peachy, it's still like deep. So this is not a favorite concealer. This wasn't enough coverage for me. I don't think it sank into my fine lines, but I also just thought it was like too tacky, but didn't last super long. Not like the Dior, which is a little less tacky, but lasts all day. So this was not a favorite of mine, and it was a lab access release. I never got the notification that they actually released like the actual concealer. Like, I don't know if that's actually come out yet. So I'm gonna just pass that one along. It does not need to stay. Now the Natasha Denona concealer in N3, High Glam Concealer. Everyone loves this. It took me a minute to really start liking it, to be honest. I thought that it was, I don't know. I didn't think it was remarkable. But the more that I use it, the more that I'm like, oh, this is like medium full coverage. And it's like so serum-like, but it's kind of tacky. It's that thin formula that sinks in that gives that perfect amount of coverage. I think N3 is probably a little bit too deep for me, but it's pretty neutral, so I definitely can get away with it. I love this so much more than I did when I first tried it. Now the Prism Libre Skin Caring Concealer from Givenchy, this one is in N120. I think this is too yellow. It's just a little bit more warm than I would like. Like, look at the difference between the concealers. I didn't love the shade. I think it's too light and it's a little bit too warm is part of it. I don't think it was bad, but I don't think I love it as much as I like the foundation. But even then, I don't know if I'm gonna hold on to the foundation either. They're not up there in terms of performance the way some of the other ones are. I'm looking at my pile of the ones that I have decluttered. I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I don't feel like the very last concealer I need to part with to balance out what I've decluttered versus what I've kept. And I think that there's 3 or 4 concealers that I've kept that I'm gonna continue testing to see whether they make it through the next declutter. So I feel good. There's some on the chopping block, and I feel like this is a good pile. So let's count them out. Okay, so I have kept 23 and I have decluttered 16. So I guess that made me start with 39 and I'm getting rid of 16. I do not feel bad about this at all. I feel good that all of these are gonna go, and only the House Labs from here is actually gonna go back into the closet. The rest of them I am going to keep, and a couple of them, how many? 2 of them are in speed reviews, and then 3 of them I'm gonna put like into the chopping block. Getting rid of all of this from the drawer. Really does feel good. So let's move on to powders. I think powders are going to be the least cutthroat. I don't buy powders that often, and I have been enjoying a lot of the powders that I have been using lately. I do know that a lot of them get ignored. I don't think it's going to be as cutthroat as I have been so far on the concealers and the primer section. You guys, I missed 4 concealers. At any given time, there is so much makeup around my room that it's all in different places, like stuff I don't like, stuff I want to talk about in different aspects, or things that I've like put in for reference. So there's stuff everywhere, and as I'm going through like different drawers, I'm finding more products that I just didn't get to talk about. So these 4 concealers, they're all gonna get decluttered. So we're gonna add these to the declutter list. This is the Fenty Beauty Wear Even Hydrating Longwear Concealer, and I have mine in the shade 150N. I liked this. I liked for how neutral it was. In fact, it's like even on the cool side a little bit, but this is a concealer that is just a little bit too thick for me. It creeps into my fine lines. So it's just a little bit too heavy. I didn't enjoy it. Same thing with this, the Revolution Color Stay Flexwear Full Cover Concealer. I have mine in the shade 015 Light. This is another super thick concealer. This one even is like a little bit too warm toned for me. It sinks into my fine lines. It's just not a good full coverage concealer for me anyway. And like my lines under my eyes, just kind of thick and pasty. I really didn't enjoy the texture. Like even the Fenty Beauty is a lot more like hydrating and sinks into the skin so much better than the one from Revlon. It's just neither of those work very well for me. Both of those are like a fairly new release, and that's kind of why they got like pushed aside, probably as I just didn't want to put them in my permanent collection. And then the Sephora Best Skin Ever Glow concealer, and this one is in the shade 20. I have liked other like lighter coverage Sephora concealers in the past. This one just, honestly, it didn't do anything remarkable. And you saw my concealer collection, there's just others that I prefer so much more than this. I didn't really find this like ultra glowy, but you know, a lot of times when they say it's like a glowy product, like I don't always see the radiance to it. I'm sorry if you guys can hear the fan. It got so hot in this room I had to turn it on. Anyway, it's very, 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 very light coverage. It's very skin-like. So if you like that kind of very light coverage or just very natural looking on the under eyes, then I think that's probably good. I just prefer a little bit more coverage. And then for color correctors, I have the Physicians Formula Butter Glow Corrector. This one came out, I want to say January, as like a spring launch. But this is too orange. This is just not a good like neutralizing shade for dark spots. It's definitely not good under the under eyes. And I meant to do something that was good for the under eyes. This is just orange. Peach was the shade. It's also like super light, like coverage too. So even when you blend it in for concealing things that like darkness that you would conceal with like a peachy shade, it just didn't do a good job neutralizing anything. So all 4 of those I'm going to declutter. So now we can move on to the other sections. We'll add this to the declutter. Okay, you guys, moving on to powders. There's actually a lot more powders here than I thought that I had. And I also have actually 2 more powders in my purse and then 1 in my car. And I didn't bring those into this, but I'm obviously gonna keep all of those. I just don't get enough use out of a lot of these powders. They just don't go into rotation. I've had one in my project pan for a while. Actually, I've had 2 in my project pan. I had one, I finished it up, I put another one in my project pan, and it's basically stayed that way for the majority of this year. So I haven't had a chance to really get like good use out of a lot of these powders. I don't know how many of these I actually want to get rid of, but I still figure we go through them because there's like 1 or 2 that I'm certain are gonna go. So I think I'll just move these again. And we'll just go through the first set. So I do have a pressed powder here from Make Beauty. This is the Diffusion Set Translucent Pressed Powder in Translucent Light Medium is the shade on this. A lot of the Make Beauty products turn pretty quickly on me. They're all removable, so you can keep these compacts. And I have kept a couple of them from the blush and the bronzer, but a lot of times they start to smell unbeknownst to me, and then the next time I pick them up, they do have like a scent to them. This particular one has a bit of coverage, but it's on the warm side for being translucent. So I may have already moved this to the Declutter. It's not a bad powder, but it's not like overly mattifying or overly long lasting. And usually when I'm reaching for a powder, that's what I'm looking for. But because it's just so warm, it really does like add quite a bit of color. It does change like the color of my foundation because it's so tinted. And again, it's just a little bit on the warm side. So I'm gonna pass this one along. This one from W7, I definitely want to get more use out of. It's the Matte Dreamer Loose Powder. It's probably the best mattifying powder that I have. It's still like pretty blurring, and I think it does offer like a little bit of coverage, but it's more like on the kind of peachy side. You know, it's on the lighter side. But it is so blurring, it is so soft and finely milled. For like an affordable, really drugstore powder, I think it's such an overlooked brand. I mean, it's sold in my CVS, but it's not sold in a lot of CVS's as far as I understand it. But it is a brand out of the UK. This one is in Classy Cameo, so it does offer a bit of coverage. It's such a good mattifying product, so I want to get more use out of this. When I first got it, I was using it pretty regularly, and then I kind of put it away because I was working on that this powder right here from Beauty Bakery, trying to pan it. So I definitely want to hold on to this one. This one from Sephora is on the newer side. It's the Translucent Loose Setting Powder in Universal. It was an okay powder, but it wasn't like remarkable. And usually when I'm using a powder or I'm keeping a powder in my collection, I really want it to do something special. This one's nice. It's just not overly blurring. It doesn't overly mattify. It's just not an exceptional powder in my collection. So even though this is newer, I am going to pass it along. This one I've had for a while. It's the Invisible Setting Powder from Supergoop with SPF 45. I have not talked about this much on my channel, but this is not a bad powder at all. You kind of like push up this thing and like press it down, and then the powder just comes out. Honestly, it's such a nice, like almost waterproof powder. Oops. They don't even make it like in this. The packaging looks a little bit different. I kind of wish they didn't attach the powder to the puffy like this, so they would just like make it separate. I feel like it would be a lot more user friendly. It is a mineral sunscreen. Yeah, sweat resistant right there. It is honestly, it's so good at keeping my makeup locked down, and it is a layer of SPF. I don't use this enough. Again, I'm not using a lot of these powders enough because I've been reaching for that one powder that I put in my project pan. So I think I'll rotate this in at some point. I'm gonna hold on to this one for sure. This one has not gone into a speed reviews. It's part of the AOA Studio haul that I had. It's the Perfect Setting Powder. This one is like slightly pink, I think. Yeah, it's the Brightening is the shade. So don't want to talk about this too much, but it's going to go in a speed reviews, so I'm going to hold on to it for now. The Makeup Forever powder in the shade Light Vanilla. I think it's 1.1 Light Vanilla, the HD Skin Setting Powder. I thought this was good. I actually thought that this was going to like lock down my makeup more than it did. I was really expecting, wow, this is really messy. I was really expecting it to be like this super mattifying powder because Makeup Forever can do some pretty mattifying things. But I found that it was like really smoothing on the skin, like more so than ultra mattifying. I like that it has this little puffy in here, but really it's kind of a mechanism to like keep this product in, because if you tip it over, like look at the shade, a lot of this stuff falls out. Anyway, I do think this is a lot of product, and I do like this powder. Again, it's just super smooth. One of those basically like powdered sugar feeling products, just ultra finely milled. So I'm gonna hold on to it. All right, in this next set here, I have the Maybelline Fit Me. This one is in 112 Natural Ivory. It's the matte and poreless. I have only used this like a handful of times. I think I even used, yeah, the little puff that's in here. The reason that it actually made it back up here is because I swapped out what was in my purse. I like to keep these compact powders that have puffies in them in my purse for the purposes of like touching up on the go. I do like this. I thought it was going to be more mattifying, maybe more poreless. I just turned up the brightness a little, or opened the curtains really. So I haven't had a chance to like use this in the morning when getting ready, but I have panned the one that's in my car, so I definitely want to hold on to this to like swap it out when it's time. I have another one in here actually that I thought about doing that with as well, which is the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pore Press Powder in, I think this is, yeah, just translucent. Again, ones that come with the puff on the inside, I like to have like just to put in my car and in my purse, because I don't want to carry around a sponge. So these are nice. I've used this powder a couple of times, but I haven't used the puffy. But I just don't need both. Like, I'd rather just keep one over the other. I'm just not sure. Is this the one I want? It's so brightening. And I also have this one too, the L'Oreal Infallible. It comes with its own puff. I don't think I've used the puff yet. This is a powder foundation, so it's a little bit different, but I don't mind the full matte coverage to put in my purse. Like, whatever will work, I will use it for touch-ups. This one's just really tinted, so maybe it's better than this one, like super white powder. This one is in the shade 130 True Beige. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think I'm going to pass along the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pore Press Powder. I don't need a translucent shade, but I will hold on to the Maybelline Fit Me and the L'Oreal for when I'm done using the one that's in my car, because I told you guys I've hit pan, like I'm scraping the edges now, because I need touch-ups when I'm out and about, because I get so sweaty being outside here. Then I have the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder in 10 Fair Light. This is basically like the equivalent of the matte and poreless, like in a loose powder form. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is one of like the softest powders that I've just touched just now. I do like this. Another powder I haven't gotten a ton of use out of, just because I've been focusing on the Beauty Bakery one. So I'm gonna hold on to this one. And then here I have the Givenchy Prism Libre Matte Finish Enhanced Radiance Loose Powder in shade 2 Satin Blanc. This is the one that has like the peachy colors in it. Honestly, I wasn't like overly impressed with this. I don't know, I just didn't find that it really did much, to be honest. Like, it wasn't overly mattifying for me. Sure, it was like finely milled, but I don't know. I honestly, I did not find it do all that much on my skin. And again, when I'm looking for a powder, I am looking for it to really mattify or to really hook me up with a little bit of radiance if it's like a lighter finishing powder. I'm gonna have to keep this to keep testing it, because I feel like I've only used it like 3 or 4 times total. And then this is a dupe to that. It's the AOA Studio Flawless Setting and Finishing Loose Powder, but this one is the one that has like the color correcting shades. I'll reserve my final thoughts because I have not put this in a speed reviews yet, but for now, that's the only reason this is gonna stay. Is it even gonna close now? What's going on? There she goes. All right, and then finally the Easy Bake and Snatch by Huda Beauty. This is another one that comes with a puffy, but I hate the puff. I hate it. It's almost like, I don't know, like silicone-y, and so like everything sticks to it. It kind of feels like what a powder foundation puff would feel like. It's not a bad powder in my opinion, but it's not super finely milled. It's not overly dry, like I do hear a lot of people say, but I think that really just depends on the user. Like, definitely if you're looking for a more mattifying product or you have oily skin, I think this is probably a good product. I mean, it's very soft, but I don't think it's like super finely milled. So far, it just hasn't been like my favorite powder. I really did think I was gonna end up like falling in love with this because the popularity of the Huda Beauty loose powder has gotten. But I don't think it's as finely milled, basically. So I'm gonna still hold on to it though. Like this one and this one, probably give it like more of a shot to stay in my collection or to get my thoughts really finalized with it. Neither of those have I used enough to really get a sense of how I feel. And then I have a little mini of the loose powder from Huda Beauty, the Baby Bake in Pound Cake. I wish that I had gotten the full size because I dislike this puffy. I feel like it just picks up everything and then nothing comes back on it. And then there's no cap or lid to pour it in. So you're forced to go like this and get it on this puffy. But what if you don't want to use the puffy? So it's like a method to get it on the skin, but then you have to really just use it. I know a lot of people like this. It's not as mattifying for a loose powder as I particularly like. I think it's like nice light and finely milled. It's just when I'm looking for a loose powder again, I want it to be a little bit more mattifying. So anyway, I do hold on to this because I talk about it quite a bit, and I would not mind at all to use this up. Like, it's a decent powder overall. So again, would not mind using this up in the slightest. So I'm gonna hold on to it. Okay, this sums up the rest of my loose powders. So I do have one from Moira Beauty that is the pink shade. I like a lot of stuff from Moira Beauty, but this is, again, another product I just haven't spent a lot of time on. Like, I think it's decent, but I'm not like into the whole I need a pink powder, I think is what it is. And usually pink powders, I will focus more like under the eyes and maybe even across the cheeks, but not something that I use like all over the face. So because of that, you know, I just don't get enough opportunity to really see how I like a pink powder or how well a pink powder works, especially because I don't feel like I need to smooth under the under eyes all the time. So I'm gonna hold on to this. This is another one that I want to put in rotation to see how I feel about it. I told you guys this would not be brutal in terms of like how many I was going to declutter in the powder department, but also that I've been focusing on the one powder and I just haven't had a chance to touch a lot of these. So a lot of these I want to retest. So I'm not even surprised that we're only like so far decluttering 3. But I know that there's a couple more that I want to declutter in here, just so you guys know there's a little bit more going out of this section. Let's talk about the one that I've been working on. The Beauty Bakery Flour Better Not Bitter. I feel like I'm using this, oh my gosh, like way more than how much is left justifiably. Like if you guys can see, there's like just less than half left in this. This one is in Oat Translucent. This used to be my favorite powder and I even had a backup, but then the backup was brand new. I never opened it. And so I ended up selling it on Mercari or something because I just figured, you know, as long as this one is taking me to use up, I'm just not going to use up the other one. I just love how finely milled this is. It's so freaking soft. It actually travels. It gives you like a little bit of coverage. It's really good at controlling oils. It's just that I'm burnt out in trying to pan it. And I want to try so many other ones that I'm like, I should just stop panning this and put it back in the drawer, or at least like bring others into rotation, which I started to do last month, and I brought in this one from Moira Beauty, which we'll talk about. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep it in the, like leave it in my Project Pan situation, like in the drawer that I use for Project Pan items, but also rotate in other ones. By the way, you guys, I don't know how long you've gone through the video noticing like spaces in my thumbnails. So I picked up these for $5. They're press-on nails from AOA Studio. And I thought, oh my gosh, press-on nails are so expensive, and as long as like I end up keeping them on and then prying them off, $5 is like such a great deal, because sometimes they can get pretty expensive, especially like the Glamnetic ones that I use quite a bit. And I also purchase them on Impress, like the Impress nails, because they sell wide nails, which is really what I need to be wearing, but not a lot of companies make them. By the way, they're just like not super inclusive for people with like larger hands, like is what I've found basically. But anyway, the Impress makes like 2 styles for wider fingers, and they're the only ones that I've been able to find that like cover my full thumbnail. These ones are not wide at all. This is the biggest one they have, and there's so much space left on either side of my thumbs. And when I was putting it on, I was like, well, what do I do? Just like take them all off now, just not wear them? Please, can we make more inclusive, like bigger finger inclusive nails? That's what I would like. And these I think were like meant to be the other way, like the tips were supposed to be lighter up here. The only thing is I needed this side to be down so that like this wasn't showing as much, like there wasn't as much of a contrast between the brown and my nail. And so because I had to mess with the thumbs, I had to keep them all consistent. Anyway, that's just a little side note. So we're holding on to this. I'll end up rotating in some more loose powders on top of still trying to pan it. Same thing with the Catrice Baking and Setting Loose Powder, Mattifying Water Resistant. This one is in C01 Translucent. I remember this being like super mattifying and really nice. Another one that I would love to bring into rotation. I haven't used this in the last 6 months, I don't think at all. It has like one of those nets in it. Again, it's like basically powdered sugar. This one is very brightening though, because it's like a white shade even though it's translucent. So it really does like brighten everything on my face. One of the finest milled of all of these. It's like very soft and smooth. So I'll just this one a little bit more as well. And then the One Size Pink powder. This is the Ultimate Setting Powder in Ultra Pink. I like this one about as much as I like the Moira Beauty one. Maybe I like Moira a little bit better. I think the Moira Beauty one's a little bit finer milled. Again, I just don't use pink powders enough all over the face to really fall in love, I suppose. This one was okay. It honestly, it didn't do as much for one size as I thought it would. Like, I thought it was going to be ultra mattifying, kind of like the powder foundation that I have from him, that a lot of his stuff is geared towards that. I don't think using this across the nose and the T-zone, where I typically get oily in this kind of shade, is really something that I want to do. So anyway, I'm going to hold on to it for now, and I'll rotate it again. Okay, here's the next little group here. Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish. This one is in One Fair. I have panned it. I have loved this powder for a while. It's one of my favorite in my collection. It's really great under the under eyes. It's super finely milled. It doesn't add like a ton of coverage, but it does add some. So I think it just like blurs the skin. It is panned. I'm sure I will finish this up at some point. I don't like to not have this because I don't have a comparable like under eye powder that I really like, even though I do have one here from Pat McGrath. I prefer the one from Charlotte Tilbury more, but again, not something that I go through very quickly because it's an under eye powder for me and I don't use a ton of product under my under eyes, but I'm still gonna hold on to this one. My beloved Dior Backstage Powder No Powder in 2N Neutral. This is not my only one. I have one that I was talking to you guys about that I have downstairs in my purse, and it is panned. I have panned that one and then started this one. This one in 2N is deep, and I like that because I like it like all over my face, and it does smooth out the foundation on my face. It's not overly mattifying. It's kind of like a natural finish. I love this powder. There's something about it that makes it last, makes it look super smooth on the skin. And I like it in 2N. I didn't intentionally buy 2N, but then I picked up my second shade in 2N on purpose. I think this is discontinued, finally. They talked about discontinuing it for a long time, and the last time I looked on Dior's website, it was finally gone. But they did have a lot of shades still available for quite a while after people started saying it was going to go out of stock. So I'm definitely not going to get rid of that. I will pan it until the end. I'm committed. Then I have the 5-in-1 Essence Primer and Finishing Powder from Wet n Wild. And this didn't come in any shade. It was just like one translucent shade. And honestly, I really did love this for like a setting product. Like, it's super finely milled and it looks so good like under the base as a primer, believe it or not. And I love it under the under eyes too. It's just so soft and cloud-like, and it does look really good with a puffy like pressed under the under eyes. I thought about getting rid of this one, but I think instead I'll hold on to this one and then maybe make an allowance for that one by maybe passing these along. So this one is the Soft Focus Waterproof Setting Powder from Moira Beauty in the shade 100. I like this, I do. This is currently in my everyday makeup drawer. It's very waterproof. I like how finely milled it is. I like a lot of things about it. It is very blurring, but there's something tacky about the formula that makes things that I put on top of it not stick well. Like creams and liquids don't lay great on top of this powder. I feel like I've used it a considerable amount very recently, and at first I didn't really love it, but I do like how blurring this is. It's just I don't love how sticky it feels on the face, and then how things just don't lay on top of it well, because I usually powder and then I'll lay my cream and liquid products down, like whatever it is, like a blush or a bronzer or a highlighter, and they just don't sit well on this powder. So I feel like I've gotten good use out of it. I'm ready to pass it along. And then the Super Matte Powder from Relove. This one's in the shade Vanilla. I do like this one too. I've kept all of these powders through the last declutter because I like them. This one is super, super soft and creamy. Like, it is creamalicious. It is so yummy the way that it feels when you touch it, and the way that it feels on the skin. It's just not an overly long-lasting powder. I mean, I'm more of a pressed powder person than I am a loose powder person anyway, but I have other powders that I like, I think, more than this, even in terms of like super mattifying, which we'll talk about in my powder foundations upcoming. So I don't know, for the sake of it's just not getting a ton of use, and this section over here is so enormous compared to the Declutter, I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna pass it along to my sister, who also has like combo oily skin that could use that. All right, let's go over this last section of powders here. Let's go over my powder foundations first. This one is Well Loved from One Size. This one is in the shade Fair 3N. I've traveled with this, I've hard panned this. I love it as a like setting powder, even though it's a powder foundation. It's pretty mattifying. It locks my makeup down pretty good. I've been using it a lot recently, so I can tell that I don't love it more than like probably the e.l.f. Camo powder foundation, but I still want to like use this to its entirety. I want to use that until I like pan it. At least I'm not over it yet. But the e.l.f. Camo powder foundation in Fair 150C is such a good like drugstore option. That's very similar to the One Size, but I think this one's just like a little bit better than the one from One Size because it's a little bit more finely milled. It's just softer, it's a little bit more blurring. I was like rotating them depending upon like the color of the foundation that I was using. Sometimes I really prefer this one. It's just smoother and things stick on top of it better. So I'm definitely holding on to that one because those are my two favorite setting powders of everyone that I've been talking about so far. I reach for those quite a bit, even though it like doesn't look like it. Like in conjunction with the Beauty Bakery one, like these two, I grab all the time. And then my Dior Backstage Powder No Powder. Like those are the 4 powders that I feel like I'm constantly reaching for. I also like this one from Moira Beauty. This one is the Complete Wear Powder Foundation in 125N. I haven't used this one as much as I have the other two, but it's also a really good, affordable powder foundation that's great for mattifying. And this one, again, decent coverage. Would love to get more use out of this. You can even see like this one is so like loosely pressed in there. Even just me swatching it, it was like kicking up a lot of product. Some of these are extremely finely milled. So again, another one I'm gonna hold on to. All right, these last 5, honestly, they're quite similar in terms of how I feel about them. I turned another light on in here because it's getting dark. The Hourglass Ambient Lighting Power in Ethereal Light. This is more like a finishing powder that kind of brightens is what this is. It's not much coverage to it at all. It just gives like this, there it is, like a hint of luminosity. The same thing with the Laura Mercier Real Flawless Luminous Perfecting Powder in Translucent. It's also like a powder that is a little bit luminous on the skin. Less so than the one from Hourglass, but there are times where I really do enjoy that like look on the face, like especially on like the cheeks and the forehead. I don't know. I think there's a time and a place for it. This one from Kiko Milano is very similar to both of those. This is different because this is like a baked formula. It has even more of a sheen, I would say, than the other two. It's kind of like hard to pick up on camera, but all 3 of these are very similar. It's just that this one's like a little bit hard pressed for me because it's like almost a gel to powder formula. It's probably hard to see, but it feels very gel-like. It doesn't pick up quite as well on a puffy as the other two do. I don't know if that's like a little bit better that you can kind of see the sheen in it. But for the purposes of the number of powders that do a similar like effect as these, I like the Hourglass and the Laura Mercier better. So I'm gonna pass the one on from Kiko Milano. It made it through my last declutter, but it's not going to make it through this one. And then my final 2 powders, I have a pink powder for under eyes from Pat McGrath. It's the Baby Pink Skin Finish Sublime Perfection Blurring Under Eye Powder. Told you guys, baby pink. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, you guys. I didn't think that I needed this in my life. I think that I have light powders that are really finely milled that do a very similar thing. This is very silky. Like even more silky than the Charlotte Tilbury that I told you guys that I really like under the under eyes. I won't go out of my way to reach for an under eye powder a lot of times and a setting powder. So this has to be something that I would like wear all over the face like I will all my other powders. You know, like the pink just For me, I don't find that I love all over the face. So I think a lot of things in pink don't have like a significant like place in my collection, I think is kind of what I'm getting at. But I still want to hold on to this because it is fairly new to me. I probably have used this like 4 times total, 4 times total, like even in testing, 4 or 5 times. And then finally the Gucci powder, the beauty powder. I think this is like Natural Matte in 01. This one I have not used enough either. It's not as finely milled as like a lot of these other ones, but I think it does offer like a decent amount of coverage, and this does have a shade and it's pretty mattifying. It does have a scent to it though. You know, this is another one that comes with like a puffy. So another one that I could like put in my purse or really anywhere like on the go like I like to, just to touch up. So I'm gonna hold on to this one, especially because it's on the newer side. All right, I've held on to 25 powders. As I anticipated, I did not get rid of that many. I ended up getting rid of only 6. So I knew this section wasn't going to be as brutal of a declutter. I still feel good that these can go on and live on, and that I've swatched these again, and I feel better about refreshing my memory about how some of these perform that have been ignored for a little while, and making like a commitment again to using more of them. Guys, I almost forgot I had some more powders in my reference library in the closet. I totally meant to include these because these are 3 that I want to declutter, and that would make like 8 powders instead of just the 5 that I got rid of. So I definitely need to do that to feel a little bit better about this declutter. I have the powder from Say. It's the Air Set Radiant Loose Setting Powder in Translucent. I don't find this overly radiant. I think it's like a halfway decent powder, but it's not overly mattifying. This is one of those like, I think of kind of middle of the road powders. And this one has like a little bit of a shade to it. Like it's slightly radiant, I guess, like a little bit. But like once it gets to the face, I don't see that it does this. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, as far as those like radiant powders go, it's just not one that I want to reach for over the Laura Mercier or the Hourglass that are in the pressed powder form. I don't have like a super need for it, so I'm going to declutter that one. Then I have the one from Rare Beauty, the setting powder in the shade Light. This I just don't find does enough for like setting my makeup down, and I think that's what this one's good for, even though it's kind of like this pinky peach shade, which is probably why I ended up picking this up. But yeah, not overly mattifying, doesn't last like super long. Looks like it offers like a decent amount of coverage, but not a powder that I'm overly attached to. So I kept it again for reference in case I did another like full face of Rare Beauty, but I haven't reached for it since I put it in there for whatever reason or whatever video, so I'm gonna pass it along. The House Labs powder also. The Bio Blurring Loose Powder in Translucent. This is another product that I just don't find did anything for me, and it's very similar to all the base products from House Labs. They don't sit well on my skin. They're just like heavy and they don't sink in. I don't think this powder is really just like any exception. I didn't love it, so I haven't reached for it again since I put it in my reference library, so I'm going to declutter it as well, and that actually makes 8 that I'm going to get rid of. So anyway, I will have more declutters upcoming, you guys, so if you're interested in seeing those, please subscribe if you're not already subscribed, because I would love for you to stick around. I'm out of here for today, you guys, and hope to catch you all in my next one. Bye, guys.